This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and yes, this is the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Network. Here we talk politics. We eat, sleep, and breathe politics. I'm a veteran of 13 national presidential campaigns, from Richard Nixon all the way to Donald Trump. And although I have a deep sentimental attachment to the Republican Party of Lincoln and Eisenhower, Nixon, of course, and Reagan, not to mention Trump, I also figured out after many years in Washington that the two parties are to a certain extent a Hegelian device to distract us from the fact that, well, when it comes to these politicians, they're all in it together. So, sure, I'm a Republican, but I'm also pretty objective. In other words, I criticize the Cheneys, the McCains, the McConnells, just the way I do the Obamas, the Bidens, Kamala Harris. I give it to you straight, and I think that's why people like the Roger Stone Show. President Donald Trump out there with a provocative proposal to do away with federal income taxes. As the president points out, we had no income tax. It was first put forward by the Congress in 1909 and ultimately ratified by the states by 1913. But prior to that, the government was fueled from the revenue of tariffs. And during the Trump presidency, he brought literally billions of dollars into the country in tariffs, when for the first time our trading partners were asked to step up. In other words, our trade negotiations, our trade deals, which were always very good for our trading partners but not so great for Americans, became good for everybody. It's a provocative idea. It follows on the cusp of his first suggesting no tax on tips, which has, at least in the swing state of Nevada, really upended the old Harry Reid Democrat machine that was built on the backs of the hotel workers and casino workers union. Out there they call it the culinary. Trump has also proposed doing away with the tax on overtime as well as the tax on Social Security. I predicted right here on the Roger Stone Show that before Election Day, they would bring back the old bugaboo of, the Republicans want to cut your Social Security. It's in the Project 2025 agenda, they tell you. Well, that's nice, but that's not Donald Trump's campaign agenda nor his platform. In fact, it was Joe Biden himself who voted for the legislation that allowed them for the first time to tax up to 50% of an individual's Social Security benefit. In 1993, the Senate, along with Biden, passed President Bill Clinton's deficit reduction plan, which required recipients with certain incomes to pay as much as 85% on their Social Security benefits. And then, of course, in 1993, Al Gore cast the deciding vote after a Senate 50-50 split to tax Social Security. Donald Trump wants to do away with it. The big story this week, however, pertains to General John Kelly, I'm kind of reminded of that old Ronald Reagan line, "There he goes again." John Kelly's is Donald Trump's former chief of staff, and turns out he is both corrupt and he's lying about Trump's alleged comments in which he claims that Trump said that he wanted generals like Hitler's generals. Let me get this straight. John Kelly has known about this for 5 years, but he didn't resign when he heard it, and he's bringing it up only now, 2 weeks before the election. Let's also look at the way this rolled out. It was first written by The Atlantic, a reporter named Paul Goldberg, immediately picked up by the New York Times, and then within hours, Kamala Harris is having a press conference outside the vice presidential residence on federal property, which, by the way, is illegal, accusing Donald Trump of loving Hitler or being like Hitler. This is called the wrap-up smear, folks. Nancy Pelosi brags about it, but once again, General Kelly, who was cashiered by Donald Trump for incompetence, insubordination, and an attempt to pursue his own agenda during the Trump presidency. It's not the first time he's made things up. This is the same guy who said that Trump, in referring to military veterans who had given their life in the service of their country, were suckers and losers. There were 20 other people present in the cemetery when Trump allegedly said this. The problem for General Kelly is not a single one of them recalls the president saying anything of the kind. As it is, by the way, with his latest claim regarding Trump talking about Adolf Hitler. Even former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who claims that he was in the room, he also has no memory of Donald Trump saying this. It reminds me kind of a song that Spike Jones recorded making fun of Adolf Hitler.
When the Führer says, wie ist der Master Race? Wie Heil, Heil, right in the Führer's face. Not to love the Führer is a great disgrace. So wie Heil, Heil, right in the Führer's face.
The point, of course, is that anytime a politician invokes Hitler, folks, it means they're losing. Amazing the way this rolled out. But the sad truth about General Kelly is that before he was cashiered for incompetence and insubordination, he joined the board of DC Capital, which is a for-profit private equity firm which utilizes former senior military contacts to pursue certain government business. In February of 2016, he was a member of the board, and then in anticipation of being nominated as Secretary of Homeland Security, Mr. Kelly stepped down, and then in January 2017, he was confirmed as the Secretary of Homeland Security. But Kelly remained on the board of advisors of DC Capital Partners, an investment firm that in turn owns a company called Caliburn. Now, in 2019, following his brief stint in the administration, after he got canned, John Kelly rejoined the board of Caliburn specifically because they operate the largest for-profit shelters for unaccompanied migrant children that the government doles out. Kelly's connection to Caliburn therefore raises serious questions given his role in immigration enforcement during his time with the Trump administration, which, surprise, saw a huge increase in the number of unaccompanied migrant children in U.S. custody. Caliburn is the parent company of Comprehensive Health Services, which has grown to become the dominant player in the private sector and the only for-profit shelter receiving very significant government contracts. Their Homestead facility, located on Federal Island, strangely is the only one that is exempt from state child welfare inspections. Quite simply, Trump never said the things that are attributed to him. Kelly is simply disgruntled and continues to try to capitalize off his tarnished reputation. He made the mistake that few White House chief of staffs have made, and that is he got confused in terms of who was the executor of presidential policies and who was the creator of those policies. You're going to want to stick with us, folks, because Lee Smith is joining us. Lee Smith is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Plot Against the President. You may have seen that because it was turned into a phenomenal documentary. It is an amazing opportunity to hear Lee Smith because he has a take on the Russian collusion hoax, the two phony impeachments of Donald Trump, and the entire effort, which began from the moment he came down the golden escalator to disappear President Donald Trump. If you're just tuning in, this is The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. Probably the biggest political news of the week was when former three-term Democrat Congresswoman from Hawaii, former vice chairman of the Democrat National Committee, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, a woman who served her country in combat in both Kuwait and Iraq, Tulsi Gabbard, announced that she would join the Republican Party. Here's a quick bite of Tulsi telling us why.
And it is because of my love for our country, and specifically because of the leadership that President Trump has brought to transform the Republican Party and bring it back to the party of the people and the party of peace, that I'm proud to stand here with you today, President Trump, and announce that I'm joining the Republican Party. joining the party of the people, the party of equality, the party that was founded to fight against and end slavery in this country. It is the party of common sense and the party that is led by a president who has the courage and strength to fight for peace.
This is an extraordinary development, but it is a part of a larger mosaic in which we see the parties meaning less and less. When you have Dick Cheney, the former vice president, who without dispute lied this country into war in Iraq, insisting that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, insisting that Colin Powell, who was then the National Security Advisor to President George W. Bush, testify before the UN Security Council, insisting that the Iraqis had acquired yellow cake uranium for the production of nuclear weapons. And then the most outrageous lie of them all, that Iraq was in some way connected to the attack on America on 9/11. And that was not the case. That war cost the lives of literally tens of thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. So the idea that Dick Cheney or his daughter are popular, or that this brings them votes simply because they are Republicans, really misunderstands the realignment going on in the party. Joining them, of course, is, I guess, Senator John McCain's son, as well as little Adam Kinzinger, the member of the January 6th committee, who knew that if he returned home and ran for re-election, he would be defeated, so he elected not to run again. He, too, has endorsed Kamala Harris. They keep pushing this idea of bipartisan endorsements. The other corollary there is the fact that the former President Trump's chief of staff, John Kelly, who we just spoke about, his former National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, and two of his secretaries of defense say that he's unfit to be president. What do all these men have in common, folks? Every one of them was fired by Donald Trump for incompetence or for having their own agenda, which was not the president's agenda and therefore not the country's agenda. It really misunderstands the realignment going on in America, because the truth of the matter is that party matters less and less. This is an epic struggle between those who want war and those who would like to avoid war, those who would censor free speech, not only on television, cable, and radio, but also, of course, on the internet, and those who believe in free speech. And now bringing an entirely new element to our politics, an effort to make America healthy again. By that, I mean analyzing why our food, as mass-produced in this country, seems to contain dozens of toxic chemicals that are not included in the processed foods in Europe. Also, of course, a complete review of the process that we use to approve pharmaceutical drugs. Who was the guy who one day said, "I've got a great idea, boss. Why don't we make all of our most important pharmaceutical drugs in China?" That has to be the worst idea I've ever heard. Stand by, folks, because Lee Smith, one of the most brilliant authors, has been my pleasure to read and follow, joins us next on The Roger Stone Show.
They a shark, yes, man.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. Joining us now is Lee Smith. Lee Smith is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The Plot Against the President, which was made into one of the most impactful and hard-hitting documentaries that I have ever seen, outlining the effort to destroy the Trump presidency. He is now back with an extraordinary book entitled Disappearing the Presidency. It's a much, much broader look at the establishment attempt to not only destroy Donald Trump, the president, but destroy Donald Trump, the man. It's a very broad book. It is sweeping in its coverage. I can't put it down. I'm still not finished it. I admit it. I'm working from a galley that Lee sent me, but it is a phenomenal work of history. Lee Smith, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Wow, Roger, thank you so much for your super kind words about me and especially the book. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you and your great audience today.
Well, President Donald Trump himself said, and I quote, Lee Smith is a great American patriot who has understood from the very beginning that the radical left is the true threat to democracy. So you can have no greater compliment from the man himself. This book is amazing because it looks at every aspect of the efforts to destroy our 45th president. Your previous book, The Plot Against the President, really laid out the true story on how Congressman Devin Nunes, one of the unsung heroes in this country, uncovered the biggest political scandal in U.S. history, which, of course, has never gotten the legitimate media coverage that it deserves. But really, what you've done in this book is outline the unprecedented campaign of domestic spying, election rigging, brute force censorship, and political violence that anti-Trump zealots have used to undermine our federal government, sabotage countless other vital institutions, and, of course, pursue their relentless quest to crush Donald J. Trump. The book is nothing short of alarming. I have to ask a professional question. Lee, how long did it take you to write this book?
Well, a lot of the research, one of the things that I wanted to do with the book, Roger, is that, all of us have been asking, I guess, since 2016, what happened? And those questions have only become more important and more impassioned as time has gone on. And so what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to give a comprehensive account of what's happened over the last 8 years, how Donald Trump, his aides and supporters, including you, famously have been targeted. And I wanted to give the background, what happened to the CIA, what happened to the FBI, what happened to these agencies, what happened to the media, how did all these things transform? And so they were all turned again against Americans, against America first, against people who love the country. So that research took, that research took several months. And then the interviews also took up some time, and I got the chance to speak with some great people for the book. The top of the list, of course, is the president himself, who said some very, very moving things and very, very important things about what's happened to him over the last 8 years. So I guess, I guess doing the research and reporting probably took about 4 months, and then, the writing was another several months. And I really enjoyed writing this book, explaining to people, trying to make it as clear as possible, exactly what's happened over the last 8 years and where we may be headed if we don't get it right in 2 weeks from now.
You outline how the U.S. intelligence services, trained to sabotage foreign governments and leaders, have turned their expertise and their authority against Americans. Tell us about that.
Well, Roger, actually, I was just speaking with a friend this morning who I quote in the book, a gentleman named Peter Theroux. And Peter worked at the CIA for many years, and I interview him in the book. And it's really heartbreaking because someone like Peter, who worked so hard, who's a great patriot, loves his country, liked hurting countries and actors who hurt Americans, right? Whether it's communists, whether it's Islamists, whether it's terrorists, whatever it is. And so there's a number of people who've worked extremely hard on behalf of this country. They've sacrificed a great deal. Of course, there's a number of people who have given their lives on behalf of this country. And from some of these agencies, like the CIA, like the FBI, like the NSA. And so what happened? What happened over the last, I really identify the problem beginning with Barack Obama. And so what really happened is that these agencies, these important institutions in Washington, D.C. were turned against the American people. I think, look, there's a lot of people on the right who have sort of adopted kind of a leftist attitude, and they think that the CIA is responsible for that. The CIA has only done evil things, and they're only responsible for bad things. But as I point out, the CIA started right after World War II, and they prevented Italy from going communist. And one of the people that I talked to in the book notes how terrible it would have been had Stalin been in control of Italy and therefore the Western Mediterranean. That would have been a disaster for the United States, for the free world. So the idea that our foreign intelligence services, that our domestic intelligence service, like the FBI, have been turned to serve the narrow interests of Barack Obama's faction and his affiliated oligarchs is shocking and disgraceful. And it's hurt not only Americans, but it's hurt Americans, including those Americans who've given so much to serve their country in those agencies and institutions.
One of the things you detail in the book is the effort to get Donald Trump begins in the Oval Office in a meeting with President Barack Obama himself, Vice President Joe Biden, Susan Rice, the CIA director, John Brennan, the FBI director, James Comey. This is, I hate to use the word conspiracy, but this is precisely what it is. Is, as I believe, Barack Obama the chief progenitor of the effort to destroy Donald Trump even to this day?
Yes. Look, Roger, I thought it was very important. We've been speaking for the last 8 years, you and I, and great Americans have been talking about the deep state, how the deep state turned on Donald Trump. And I've believed for some time that to refer to the protagonist as the deep state is a problem because that's an abstraction, right? We're talking about maybe tens of thousands of bureaucrats. And I think it's very important for Americans to realize that there are actual people who hold real power and who have access to vast amounts of money and who are using that money and that power to advance interests on behalf of particular people. I think it's really important to name those names and to identify those figures. And at the very top of the pyramid, as you note, is Barack Obama. And one of the things that I do in the book is I point out how all these various aspects of this multi-pronged campaign to target Trump, his aides and supporters, whether we're talking about censorship, whether we're talking about surveillance, whether we're talking about rigging elections, whether we're talking about political violence, they all have their origin point with Barack Obama. I mean, I've had a sense of this for many years, but to do the research and to dig in and to actually identify the particular moment when these campaigns kicked off and Obama's role in them, I mean, it's really kind of astonishing. And I think that it'll help readers understand what's been going on the last 8 years. And also, Roger, for us to be able to put names on it, for us to say who's behind it, it also gives us a chance to win. To say we're fighting the deep state is like saying we're going to fight the DMV. We're going to fight a huge, massive bureaucracy, and that's an unwinnable fight. And so let's get specific. Let's say who's driving this campaign against Trump, against the Republic, and let's hold them accountable.
If you're just tuning in, folks, I'm Roger Stone, and this is The Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Lee Smith, New York Times bestselling author, about his new book, Disappearing the President. By the way, you can get that book by going to encounterbooks.com, or you can go to Amazon if you want to give money to a multinational corporation that hates your guts. And we'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show. This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. This is The Roger Stone Show. Thank you for tuning in. We're talking to Lee Smith, the New York Times bestselling author of The Plot Against the President. And now he's back with an even more incredible book, Disappearing the President, which is really a compendium, a complete outline with a lot of documentation of the efforts by a globalist elite to not only destroy his presidency, but destroy Donald Trump, the man. Before we went to break, we were talking a little bit about the intelligence agencies, but now I'm very interested in the way the big tech firms who have controlled so much of our online discourse have been in on this effort to get Trump from the very beginning.
Right. Well, in the subtitle of the book, Disappearing the President, it's Trump, Truth Social, and the Fight for the Republic. So I explain, I mean, this book has a lot to do with big tech, and of course it also talks about the fact that Donald Trump was banished from social media after January 6, 2021. He was thrown off Facebook, he was thrown off Twitter, and in fact the book starts with a very, I find it a very moving interview with the president, who says, I didn't have a voice, and he needed to communicate with his people. He said he had lots of ideas that he needed to share. He wanted to share. And he had no way to communicate with people, and so it's really shocking. It's very important to remember during our conversations, as we have become more and more aware of the censorship regime targeting Americans, that they went after the president of the United States, Donald Trump. And of course, one of the first people who moved to censor Donald Trump, this was in 2019, was then Senator, now Vice President and Democratic Party presidential candidate Kamala Harris, was calling to censor Donald Trump. So the big tech component is a very significant part of the operation, the Get Trump operation. And Truth Social, in a sense, is the way that the president and now Truth Social CEO Devin Nunes understand Truth Social is really kind of a backstop. They're very happy, of course, that Twitter now under Elon Musk is a free speech platform. I mean, everyone's happy about that. And of course, we're happy about the support that Elon Musk has given the president. But Truth Social is really, again, the backstop for free speech. That's how they perceive it. And when Donald Trump talks about it, Truth Social, by the way, is surging. It's doing very well. It's doing very well on the market these days. And a lot of that has to do with the optimism about Trump's electoral chances in 2 weeks. But as Donald Trump has said, he has no intention to sell his Truth Social stocks because for him, even though he became a tech startup billionaire with Truth Social, the most important thing is that this is Trump's voice. So regardless of what Amazon may do, of what Apple may do, and remember these were the big tech giants that canceled Parler, the social media platform Parler. So in spite of what they may do, in spite of what happens with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook or other big tech platforms, there is always going to be Truth Social for Donald Trump, and also not just Donald Trump supporters, but anyone who's determined to maintain and fight for free speech. So, yeah, big tech is a really big part of the book.
Yeah, I love Truth Social. I'm real Roger Stone there. I post there every day. I really love it. I get a lot of engagement, and I recommend it to folks who may, like me, be banned for life on Facebook, which I am, banned for life on Instagram, which I am, banned for life on TikTok, which isn't so bad because I don't want the communist Chinese to have everything that's in my telephone. And I love Devin Nunes. He was actually my first choice for vice president. I love J.D. Vance.
I remember you said that, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually a great idea.
He would have been great. Now, I understand leaving Truth Social. That would be difficult. But once the company became public, I really thought he had a higher and greater calling. He's one of those few guys who spent a while in Congress, but never forgot where he came from, never became part of the Washington insider clique, but, he was a dairy farmer from California who never lost his roots. He's a great man, and he's done an amazing job. And I think his greatest public service lies ahead, actually.
That's very kind. Reporting that first book, Plot Against the President, Devin Nunes and I became pretty close and friends, and we went out there. My family went out there and visited his family in California. It's just so nice. I mean, it's Central Valley, California, so we're not talking about the horrible stuff that's hit so many parts of California. But it's a great farming community, dairy and fruits and vegetables and cattle. So yeah, it's very moving, and I hope that spirit comes through in this book too, because I speak with Devin Nunes a lot in Disappearing the President. And, he's really one of he and Kash Patel are really, I wouldn't say voiceovers, but they kind of give direction and help point out to people the important things that have been going on in our country the last 8 years, whether it was the CIA, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the media, whether it's big tech. And now, of course, one of the fights that Devin Nunes has had is on Wall Street, getting Truth Social listed. So they can get investment and so they can grow that company. And I have been talking about in the book saying, boy, I had no idea that the world of finance is as dirty and as rotten as it is. But nonetheless, they're thriving over there, and just a really great bunch of guys.
Kash Patel, another great patriot and good friend of mine. Let's talk about these assassination attempts, because they are unfortunately a part of this puzzle. Pardon me for being skeptical, but particularly a man accused of trying to kill President Donald Trump at a West Palm Beach golf course. We now are told by the Department of Justice that his trial has been postponed indefinitely. Because there's so much evidence against him, none of which we'll ever be able to see, of course. The man is, according to what we've been told, indigent, can't make his child support payments, has a failed business where he lives in Hawaii, but actually managed to somehow vote in North Carolina. has visited Ukraine. Not sure how he paid for that. Visited a number of other European countries. Posts a website online to try to recruit mercenary soldiers to fight in Ukraine. Hard for me to believe that this man, Ryan Routh, is not known to our intelligence services.
At a normal time in our great country, we would expect our federal law enforcement authorities to be as transparent as possible. After all, there have been 2 attempts on the life of the former president and the man who is likely to become the 47th president of the United States. 2 attempts on his life, and you would think that the FBI and Secret Service would be as transparent as possible and say, well, look, here's what we know. Here's what we don't know, and we're going to keep updating the American people. We know that not everyone loves Donald Trump, but it doesn't matter. He's an American. He's a former president, and people need to know what happened here.
Once again, folks, the book is Disappearing the President by Lee Smith. You can get it by going to encounterbooks.com or any place where great books are sold. I cannot recommend this to you enough. Because it will put everything we have seen in context. Lee, I think this is going to have a happy ending in just a few days. Lee Smith, thank you so much once again for joining us on The Roger Stone Show.
Thank you so much, Roger.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back, folks. My guest now is Paul Stone. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Colonial Metals Group, a company that excels in helping folks maximize their retirement assets and savings through secure and effective planning and by utilizing precious metals like gold and silver. But Paul is so much more than that. He's not a trained economist, but he's a brilliant economic analyst. And he joins us to talk about our current economy, our future economy, and where we are headed. Paul, I can't resist asking you off the top. President Donald Trump says just a couple of days ago that he would like to see us do away with the income tax, the federal income tax, entirely. And finance the government through the revenues generated by tariffs, the way the government was funded up until 1913. What's your thinking?
Yeah, I love that idea. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Nixon or Lincoln who, thinking ingenuitively thought, oh, give me a financial edge over the South. I'll start income tax on anyone dealing with federal lands or works for the federal government, and that'll give us a little financial edge to spend more than the South. Outspending your enemy is a tried and true way to win a war. And I thought they gave it a 2-year drop dead date, and obviously when 2 years came around, they renewed it, and here we are today with a government that spends $1.4 trillion a year on its own payroll. So I'm a huge fan of going back to things constitutional because I love the idea of living with a developed government, community, and country off of the mindset of those who freshly left socialism and monarchies in Europe when our founders fought for this land to be ours.
Well,
I like a small government. I like a tiny government.
Yes, indeed. It's the first thing that attracted me to American politics. If you go back to Barry Goldwater's book, The Conscience of a Conservative, a small government that does only those functions absolutely necessary rather than the expansive government we have today. Look, I have written 2 books on Richard Nixon. He was my political mentor. And I candidly admit that the 1971 decision to take us off the gold standard, to close the gold window, as they say, could be the single greatest mistake of his presidency. Now, the sad truth is, it was Texas wheeler dealer and Secretary of the Treasury, John Connally, that he was governor who was actually wounded when President John F. Kennedy was slain, who persuaded Nixon over the objections of Arthur Burns, who was chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, a very wise man, to take us off the gold standard. And this has, according to you and many others, has had repercussions right to the current day. Talk to me about this.
You know, I think the easiest way I've ever come up with in helping people draw quick attention to the significance of what he did is the same thing. The gold standard is the same thing to our financial world and the sanctity of our currency and the navigable future of the generations to come is the same thing. The gold standard of that financial system is like the moon to our planet's oceans. With no moon, this is such a magical place to live. With no moon, we'd never have met. You would never be able to sail the oceans. There'd be 200, 300-foot waves everywhere. No one would ever live anywhere near a beach. Nowhere. You could never get down to the ocean. You would never be able to use it. We never would have sailed across. There'd be no Columbus. The world might still be considered to be flat because it's that gravitational pull on our planet that keeps the oceans calm. It keeps them navigable and predictable. The currents and everything that has to do with the ocean and how life comes out of the ocean for the rest of the ground dwellers up here on the surface of the earth. It's a hell of a relationship. When Nixon took the gold standard away, he removed the moon from our financial world, meaning there's no longer a holistic, wholesome force that keeps things right-sized, keeps conversations based in reality. Almost every conversation you'd have when it comes to the government and business would have to do with money being expended. And so when you can't have crazy conversations about building out bathrooms and government and school dwellings to include folks who don't know what sex they are and all that money you'd spend, one, there wouldn't be the money for that conversation. And two, you wouldn't have that conversation. We would continue to not be such a confused society today. We would have been streamlined. The government would have stayed right-sized. We would have stayed in power. And real decision-making could have gone on like it had gone on for thousands of years in between the camps of the society and those who govern society. So it was beyond destructive. We're going to see eventually just how destructive that decision was, because you can now, beyond the normalcy that departed when he broke into an episode of Bonanza and told everyone he was doing, one, the decision's born out of a lie. So there wasn't years of research going into this. Alan Greenspan said in a thesis paper as he was departing the portion of his life from being a student to being, an executor of things, in his master's thesis, or maybe it was his doctorate, that any financial system without gold involved is lunacy. Lunacy. Now let's take that back. What does money involve? Everything. Your salaries, everything you enjoy, things you'll save for, things you'll cherish and hopefully one day have, right? But it keeps society kind of the same in the way that we don't have extremism where, people are so wealthy, it's mind-blowing, but there's no understanding how they became so wealthy when everyone else is just working for a living. Now everyone hates their job because it'll never produce enough earnings for them to feel like they've made it in life or ever to even get ahead. Because the other thing that he did is slaughter the American family. You caused wage growth to slow behind the increase of the cost of living. But for the thousands of years of countries using gold and silver as money, your wages grew faster than costs. So by the time you get married, you're young, you could afford a house, you could afford a baby. Mom didn't have to work. And by the time you were 40 years old, you were rolling. Your income far outpaced the cost of living beneath you. Once we left the gold standard, the cost of living jumps up ahead of wages. And now 53 years later, August 15th is the anniversary date of that evil decision. 53 years later, 40% of our country doesn't earn enough money to have to pay taxes. There's struggle, poor people everywhere, but just dying inside. There's no shot for them to ever, they know it, ever coast, ever be able to just catch a breath. Many people in this country are working 2 or 3 jobs. And the worst thing that happened to the family system is mom had to go to work. Now, women might today choose to go to work. That's fine. But they were forced to give up their job that they'd had for thousands of years of being a mother when babies came around. So imagine this, the heightened craziness around the topic of abortion. There would hardly be the level of abortions needed today if moms were able to stay at home because dad's income was enough to cover the cost for the family. So if she got pregnant, boom. Well, honey, we're having a baby. But these days, it's, oh, my God, what an inconvenience. I didn't plan for this. I can't give up my job. I went to school for all this time to have a career, and now I have to put that on hold to have a baby. So abortions wouldn't be anywhere near the zesty conversation it is today if Nixon had. There's so many things. I could go on and on.
You know, all of my smart friends seem to be diversifying their portfolios to include not just gold, but gold and silver. When we come back, I want to talk to Paul Stone about that, and also about the fact that he's working on a book titled 1971. We've talked about it quite a bit over cocktails. This is going to be an incredible book, folks. It's not just about gold. It's much, much broader than that. If you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Paul Stone. No, we're not related, but we could be. He is the chairman and chief executive officer of the Colonial Metals Group, and he wears the coolest shoes you've ever seen. We'll be right back.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
You know, with the current administration moving swiftly towards digital currency, that's where your paper money would be no good, would no longer be legal tender. And with the wild spending going on in Washington fueling inflation, I can't think of a better time for you to move quickly to protect your retirement, to protect your retirement nest egg or your IRA. All of my smart friends are doing it by diversifying their portfolios with precious metals like gold and silver. And the one company that I trust entirely to do that is Colonial Metals Group. Now, folks, if you go to freegoldguide.com/stone, that's freegoldguide.com/stone, they can answer all your questions and tell you why protecting yourself by acquiring gold and silver is just common sense.
This is the Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
Folks, we're back, and we're talking to Paul Stone, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Colonial Metals Group. As I said before the break, many of my friends are diversifying their portfolio, protecting their nest egg, their retirement, by investing in gold and silver. I owned a tiny bit of it. I like it because you can hold it in your hand because it's a real asset. It's not paper. And if you're interested in this, let me urge you to go to freegoldguide.com/stone, freegoldguide.com/stone. Paul's company will give you a free analysis of your current portfolio and financial situation, and they can advise you on how to make shrewd decisions regarding gold and silver. Paul, you told me the other day over lunch that you thought if Kamala Harris won this election that there would be a surge in those seeking to put gold and silver into their portfolios. Talk a bit more about that.
Oh, thank you so much, Roger, and thanks for having us. And we love this partnership. My main job, I work for you. I work for the listener, the American, that's sensing there's some issues here to be concerned about. And I'm trying to bring awareness to what that solution is. So gold and silver is a solution to a problem. What's the problem? Well, first of all, people start thinking, I got to safeguard my money. Oh my God, we live in a world where we have to safeguard our money? Where's the threat coming from? It's just, I don't know. It's just, things are going up so high. How do they stay there? What's the threat coming from? It's coming from the government. Reagan said it best. The government's solutions are worse than its damn problems. So extrapolate that out for 53 years where they can print all the money they want to solve their problems. Here you are. Ta-da. So what they're doing, though, as everyone gets upset and feisty about the money printing, the debt. First of all, in your mind, stop calling it debt. Roger, if I borrowed $1,000 from you, we could call that debt because I'm probably going to pay it back. You're going to go to sleep every night going, Paul's going to pay that back. No one's paying back $35 trillion. So stop calling it debt because you're putting it in the wrong category. It's just theft. It's just outright theft from the future values of our dollar. So the dollar now, the next thing you want to do is look at it as a resource. Stop thinking of it as money because the government's not treating it like money. They're treating it like a resource. Now let's pretend the dollar comes out of the ground. Let's say we're mining the dollar. The government's has pulled now 97% of the value of that mine out of the earth. It would be a cavern so vast you could park every plane in the world inside of that hole. Vast, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars. And the dollar now, that mine, only has 3% left to be yanked out of the ground and thrown into the economy to prop everything up tomorrow. So there's a drop-dead date on how much longer that resource can provide you with all the comforts and luxuries and the value of your retirement savings. Eventually it goes to zero. Hyperinflation kicks off, and then you have a firestorm raging through the componentry of your financial world. This is what I've studied and read, so it's not my idea. I'm just trying to verbalize the likelihood of this because it's happened before. You're dealing with a math problem. Scream and yell all you want at the TV. It isn't going to change the math. So the way gold and silver helps people is you're relocating your savings out of harm's way, out of the dollar. You're no longer dependent on the dollar burning at the hands of the government to prop up everything you have. You're moving it out of the dollar and into something the government isn't screwing around with. And it can't be made in a lab. And it can't come out of the ground really any faster. The world is scurrying around looking for gold and silver everywhere it can. Typically, a new gold mine, you discover it today, you'll be getting gold out of the dirt 10 years later. So it's really hard to find. And you think it's everywhere? It's not. Because 70% of the globe's covered by an ocean. And it's really hard to convince investors to dig for gold and silver on the bottom of the ocean. So that's never going to happen. So it's extremely limited. And yes, so if Kamala wins, I think what happens is the exhaustion sets in. The stone cold sobering of, oh my God, 4 years of Biden, now 4 years of Kamala, we're done. Hope is not a plan. It's something, but it's not a plan. And so if she wins, if she's the one headed to the White House in January, I believe we're going to see a line across the state. Right now we have a line easily across the county for people moving money to gold and silver. But we'll be living on the surface of the sun in our industry if she wins here next week. or whatever, 9 days from now.
It seems to me that two strong reasons that one would invest in precious metals like gold and silver is because this administration seems hell-bent on moving us to some kind of digital currency. That means your paper money would no longer be a legal tender for any transaction. You'd be given a card controlled by the government. The government would control your money. If you go to buy groceries or gasoline or whatever you're buying, whoever controls that card gets to decide whether you're allowed to make the purchase. So I don't know if they don't like where you contribute to your church or the political candidates you're giving to. You don't control your own money. And now you add to that the wild spending, the spending where they just seem to print it up. Oh, we need another $20 billion for Ukraine, boys. Print it up and let's get it out the door. Now seems to me to be the perfect time. If you send for your free gold guide, which you get, by the way, at freegoldguide.com/stone, you'll find out a lot of important things. You'll find out how to protect and grow your retirement savings, and that can include your IRA. Folks are sometimes confused about this, but you can get a gold IRA, perfectly proper. You're going to find out which precious metals offer a strong defense against the de-dollarization and the current inflation. You'll find out how Colonial Metals offer safe and effective retirement plans to optimize your assets and savings. And you'll find out how simple it is to safeguard your retirement tax-free and penalty-free. You're actually taking advantage of a perfectly legal IRS loophole to protect your financial future tomorrow. This is a tremendous little booklet. Tells you everything you could possibly want to know about gold and silver. And again, you get it by going to freegoldguide.com/stone. The folks at Colonial will be happy to talk to you about your personal situation and help tailor something that works specifically for you. Folks, go check out Colonial Metals Group. I think you'll be most glad you did. Paul Stone, thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems...
You know, folks, when I don't feature one of my recipes on the show, people actually complain. I come from both Italian and Hungarian descent. I'm half Hungarian, half Italian. Italian, as I say, from the waist down. And I miss the old 21 Club. The 21 Club was a legendary restaurant on the 52nd Street in New York, no longer there. But they had a club burger, a hamburger that I still dream about at night. You basically take a mixture of ground beef. I usually go 80% chuck, 20% sirloin, some breadcrumbs, some celery, some compound butter with a little fresh basil, thyme, parsley, salt and pepper. And then, of course, later you're going to need the toppings, the lettuce, the tomato, the cheese, the pickles, the onions, ketchup if you prefer. You form these into patties. You cook them on a medium-hot charcoal fire or a gas grill or a large cast-iron skillet using canola oil. Cook for your desired doneness, about 12 minutes total for medium rare. Then you assemble your burger with a toasted bun, lettuce, tomato, cheese, pickles, onions, as I say. And then it features this butter, which you can actually freeze and insert in the middle of the ground beef patty if you wish. Kind of adds an extra layer of flavor and juiciness to the burger. So there you have it, the 21 Club Burger. It is the best burger you will ever have. A guy I enjoy eating with, a true friend, Mike Crispy, who currently hosts Mike Crispy Unafraid, one of the most popular daily live streaming shows on Rumble.com. He's also national correspondent for LFA TV. Was a delegate to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, a leader of President Donald Trump's campaign in the Garden State, but also near and dear to my heart. He is one of the founders of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, the largest Italian-American nonprofit advocacy group in the nation, fighting to protect our legacy, our heritage, and the many great things that Italian-Americans have done for this country. Mike Crispy, thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Always a pleasure, Roger. And that was some recipe. I wish I was around for the 21 burger. Someone's going to have to bring that back. That sounds amazing.
It was the place to see and be seen. Richard Nixon had his own table, and Mickey Mantle had his own table, and Roy Cohn had his own table, and it was the place to be and to be seen. Andy Warhol took a picture of me there once when I was much younger. It was an amazing place. In any event, I want to talk politics, of course. The Newark Star-Ledger, which is probably one of the worst newspapers in America, they love incumbents regardless of party. Their editorial page, could be a substitute for sleeping pills because they never want to take any definitive positions that aren't completely establishment. But they had a piece on you recently that I have to admit kind of read to me like a hit job. You seem to have upset a bunch of people in New Jersey simply because you're a conservative and a supporter of the greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, Donald J. Trump. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, Roger. Well, I mean, this is a line I think that comes from you, that even if they write a hit piece, as long as they use a good picture on the cover of the paper, that's what matters most, right? So it was a good picture of me at the Trump rally in Wildwood, but they wrote it in the connotation that I was an ultra-conservative, and that because I was an ultra-conservative and influencing other people to become what they call ultra-conservatives, that somehow makes me and the movement that we've built in New Jersey a bad thing for the state and a bad thing for the Republican Party, kind of casting the MAGA base, which is now overwhelmingly the majority of New Jersey politics, that gaining with that footing is bad. It's an outlier. They couldn't be any further from the truth. I mean, here's what I say. If being an ultra-conservative means that you stand for open borders, well, then we're ultra-conservatives. If wanting to curb inflation means that you're an ultra-conservative, then we're ultra-conservative. If advocating for gun rights, Second Amendment rights, for children not to be learning LGBTQ and being shown porn in the elementary schools, if that makes you an ultra-conservative, well, then sign us up. So they did it as a hit piece, Roger, but these fake news journalists will never learn that when they write stuff like that, the outpouring of support that actually comes from it, from rational-minded people who go, I want to become a part of this thing because, Donald Trump has exposed how fake the news could be and how much they slant it. So they write it like a bad thing. They put it in a negative connotation. But people are numb to that. They're immune to that. Trump has exposed the bias in the media like no other political figure in our lifetime. So he's exposed that. And the Newark Star-Ledger, they thought they were trying to do a gotcha on me. But in reality, they only made us 10 times stronger. And they're helping President Trump's campaign, actually, in New Jersey, by doing it as what they call a hit piece. I call it, good PR.
Well, your name was spelled right, and that's one of the key things. It is kind of funny, though, how you're an ultra-conservative, but Cory Booker, for example, he's not an ultra-liberal. I mean, it's an absurd. I mean, here's a guy who, as mayor, basically took $700,000 from the city water authority, which he controls, which was paid to his law firm, which then in turn paid the money to him. When he was confronted by the press about this, he said, well, I didn't vote for that, but the minutes of the meeting where he's an ex officio member of the board of the Water Authority shows that he was present and he voted yes. And then the woman who's the head of the Water Authority, she actually went to prison over this. At first, he said it had nothing to do with the Water Authority. That money from his law firm was a buyout. Then he said, no, wait a minute. It was delayed compensation. You know what it was? It was an embezzlement is what it was. But where was the Newark Star Ledger? By the way, I wrote this in a book called Spartacus, an unauthorized biography of Cory Booker. Every word of it, of course, is documented. The president's going to Madison Square Garden. Some have tried to draw negative intonations about that. Yeah, it's true that the 1924 Democrat National Convention, also known as the Klan Bake, had their convention there. It is the Democrat Party, of course, being the party of the Ku Klux Klan. But look, Jimmy Carter had his nomination convention there. Bill Clinton held a rally there. FDR had a rally there. John F. Kennedy had a rally there in 1960. There was a women's rights rally there in 1970. Ronald Reagan visited it for a 1984 campaign rally. Again, John F. Kennedy's famous birthday gala featuring Marilyn Monroe in that very provocative dress, singing breathlessly in that breathy voice, "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." That was right there at Madison Square Garden. Again, Nixon had his final rally there in 1968, shortly before he pulled off the greatest comeback in American political history. So this is going to be very, very, very exciting. I understand the bill includes not just President Trump, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the newly minted Republican Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat Congresswoman from Hawaii, who is an amazing, amazing woman, an amazing veteran, an amazing American. Mike, this sold out within 3 hours of the president announcing that he would be having a rally. He charges nothing, obviously. Anyone can come. Security will be ultra, ultra, ultra tight, as you might imagine. But it occurs to me that all of this media regarding Madison Square Garden rolls over to North Jersey. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that impact. So, folks, you're listening to the Roger Stone Show. I'm talking to Mike Crispy of Mike Crispy Unafraid, and we'll be right back.
This is the Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. We're talking to Mike Crispy. Mike Crispy was a candidate for Congress in New Jersey's 4th Congressional District, one of the most Republican districts, one of the most pro-Trump districts in the country, a 27-plus Trump district after congressional redistricting, Monmouth and Ocean County, which is where Mike's from. And I have a feeling that his first campaign for Congress was not his last campaign for Congress, but he decided in this cycle that it was more important for him to do everything he possibly could to return Donald Trump to the White House. And the truth is, when I analyze it, Mike, you've done rallies, I think, at this point in almost every county in the state. You've been more active than the Republican State Committee or in some cases the Trump campaign. And you are really fomenting a grassroots uprising. And there's a lot of people here involved who've never been in politics before, never even paid attention to it. But they're awake now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you this, you're talking about Madison Square Garden. It was really exciting in the last segment, Roger, just talking about the weight of it. And the amount of people that are coming from New Jersey to Madison Square Garden is staggering. It's unbelievable. I've never seen the enthusiasm in North Jersey to support, a Republican presidential candidate in my life. So this is going to be very exciting. But back to New Jersey and what we're doing. I mean, we've held almost 30 now events for President Trump around the state. I think we're at 26, and then we're holding two over this weekend, 2 events this weekend, and then we have about 3 or 4 more scheduled to Election Day. And the goal was to put New Jersey in play. You know, President Trump had a rally with over 100,000 people in Wildwood, and we wanted to capture that excitement and keep the momentum going. So, our group, the America First Republicans in New Jersey, we set out to fulfill the too big to rig message in this state. So we've had these rallies in almost every county. You're right about that. We have a couple more to get to, but we're going to get to them. And we've crisscrossed the entire state. And no matter if we're in the bluest area of Newark where we had a rally, or whether we're in, deep red Ocean County, we'll draw 200 to 300 people every single time for President Trump. And we're engaging people on the too big to rig message, which is knowing how to early vote, ballot harvesting, voting by mail, becoming poll watchers, getting people involved in the process that they normally were never involved in. Republicans usually sit at home and wait until Election Day. And obviously we've learned what can happen. If you wait until Election Day, they can engage in malfeasance on Election Day. So you got to have it from every single angle. And I really like, obviously, the numbers we're seeing all over the country with early voting. I think the message is resonating. And our message in New Jersey and our mission in New Jersey is to put the state in play for President Trump by making it too big to rig, because we all believe firmly and rightfully that this guy has the values that are in line with the New Jersey voter. South Jersey is bright red. North Jersey and Central Jersey is purple. And then in the urban centers, Newark, Camden, Patterson, Hudson County, adjacent to New York City, these are areas where, obviously Republicans don't win, but President Trump's message is very strong. And obviously we've all seen the way that he polls, in the black community, particularly with black males. So him gaining and making these strides in all these demographics really puts the state in play. And our mission has been, if nobody else will do it in the state, we're going to do it. So we've led almost 30 events. We're going to run through the tape and the finish line and put the state in play for President Trump on election night. And everyone's going to be shocked, but us, we're not going to be shocked because we've been doing the work all year long.
Yeah, I based on everything I've seen, the state clearly is moving within range, which is completely unforeseeable a year ago. But I've watched the margin, first by Biden and now by Kamala, dwindle. It was once 9, then it's 7, then it's 6, then it's 5, then it's 4, moving very much in the right direction. I mean, New Jersey has changed demographically. It's not the swing state that it once was. I mean, Gerald Ford carried it over Jimmy Carter in 1976. Richard Nixon carried it over Hubert Humphrey in 1968. Reagan, of course, carried it both times. It was a shocker the first time, 1980. But since then, it has really pretty much been beyond reach. It's not beyond reach today. That's what I think the genius of this Madison Square Garden rally is, because not only does he dominate the media in New York, but he dominates the media in North Jersey. He dominates the media in my native state of Connecticut. But he also dominates the media in eastern Pennsylvania, which is a prime swing state. And I think, based on my calculation of the electoral votes, is absolutely crucial for his victory. So it's a genius move. It's a national event. I don't know if you watched that event the other night. I guess it was in Georgia with Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump. This is the new Liberty League, folks. These are the people that are going to lead us back to prosperity, lead us back to peace, lead us back to a healthy America. It's an exciting political realignment. It's like the one we had in this country in 1932 under Franklin Roosevelt that built a lasting coalition that kept Democrats into the office of the presidency and in Congress for decades. Then Richard Nixon forged a new American majority in 1968. He was in a three-way race, but that underlying coalition later goes on to elect Ronald Reagan twice. It is essentially the same coalition that elected Donald Trump. Mike Crispy, thank you so much for joining us on The Roger Stone Show.
Great honor, Roger. Madison Square Garden is going to be rocking. Can't wait. Always a pleasure.
See you there.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and indeed, this is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC Radio. 77 WABC, the biggest, most powerful, most influential, and most entertaining AM radio station in America today. Here on The Roger Stone Show, we talk politics, news, history, style, and, well, yes, food, because, well, I like to eat. Donald Trump going to Madison Square Garden just a few hours from now. I understand that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, I believe Tucker Carlson, headlining what is an absolute sellout, sold out, folks, within 3 hours of the announcement that the president would go there. There's a great historical tradition surrounding political rallies at Madison Square Garden. Some have suggested that because in the 30s, the America Firsters, those led by Charles Lindbergh, had a rally there to oppose Americans' involvement in foreign wars. But the truth is, Bill Clinton has had a rally there. Al Gore had a rally there. Richard Nixon had a massive rally there, which I was at the end of his 1968 campaign. It has been actually a tradition. The only candidates who haven't gone to Madison Square Garden for a rally are those candidates who can't fill the place. That will not be a problem for Donald J. Trump. I expect there to be a very substantial line outside. Very ironic that this week a Republican Congresswoman, Liz Cheney, who was ignominiously dumped by the voters back home in Wyoming, endorsed Kamala Harris for president, and she does so on the very week that it was revealed that Cheney was improperly coaching a January 6th committee witness behind the backs of the witness's lawyer. That is, of course, a matter for which she can be disbarred. Cheney's record of misconduct and bias in the January 6th committee hoax is coming more and more into focus. In my own case, she most definitely suborned perjury from witness Cassidy Hutchinson regarding both me and my friend General Michael Flynn. On June 28th of last year, Cassidy Hutchinson, a former aide to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, was a surprise witness before the January 6th committee hearings. Although heavily hyped as this surprise witness with, quote, startling new information, the media told us, much of what Cassidy said was both eagerly reported as fact, by the mainstream media and almost just as quickly debunked by the more objective news organizations. I won't recount here how quickly disproved Cassidy Hutchinson's claim was that an irate Donald Trump, so angry that his Secret Service detail wouldn't take him to the Capitol, sought to grab the wheel of his vice presidential limousine and assaulted a Secret Service agent. How one grabs the wheel when one is sitting all the way in the back of an SUV is one obvious question, but several Secret Service officials were prepared to testify for the January 6th committee and would have testified, as they said publicly, that none of this ever actually happened. Needless to say, those witnesses weren't called by the committee. Congresswoman Liz Cheney induced Hutchinson to say, to be specific, that it was her, quote, understanding that President Trump instructed White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to call Roger Stone and General Michael Flynn on the evening of January 5th, and that it was, using her words, Hutchinson's understanding that these calls were completed on the evening of January 5th. Liz Cheney helpfully added, well, the call was to find out from Flynn and Stone what would happen on January 6th. Rolling Stone headline, Trump told Meadows to call Roger Stone and Michael Flynn day before Capitol attack for some strong reason, by Nikki McCann Ramirez, who in this case is entirely wrong, and that's a lie. USA Today said that Meadows, Stone, and Flynn, former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, spoke with Roger Stone and Michael Flynn the night before the Capitol attack regarding what would play out the next day. So Rolling Stone, USA Today, MSNBC, Yahoo News, the Miami Herald, and others immediately reported Hutchinson's claim as if it was a fact. If any of these news outlets had bothered to call me for comment, which, by the way, is how it works in journalism, when you say someone's name, a real journalist has an obligation to at least attempt to reach the person they're reporting on for comment. None of those outlets contacted me, but had they done so, I would have told them that the claim was unequivocally false. I never received any such call from Mark Meadows on January 5th or on any other date. In fact, I have never communicated with Mark Meadows, not by phone, not by text, not by encrypted message, not by email. I do think I met him once in the green room at Fox in 2019 when he was still a congressman, and we had a very brief conversation. Now, I checked with General Flynn, and he tells me that he also did not speak to Mark Meadows on January 5th. So we have no phone records that would reflect the claim. ABC News, to their credit, at least reached out for my attorney, and they reported Stone, for his part, said through his attorney that he and Meadows did not talk. Unequivocally stated, my lawyer said, Mr. Stone did not speak to or otherwise communicate with Mr. Meadows on January 5th or 6th. Additionally, Mr. Stone did not receive a call from Mr. Meadows on either day. My lawyer, Grant Smith, Esquire, exclusively told ABC News. So I give ABC credit, at least they called. Hutchinson went on to say that Meadows wanted to attend a briefing in a war room that was set up in the Willard Hotel. Hutchinson said that Meadows was persuaded by her not to attend this briefing in person, but he participated in the briefing by being briefed later by Roger Stone and General Flynn by phone. That is also categorically false. Never was any such phone conversation, and phone records of all those involved would indicate that. Once again, since there was no briefing, that doesn't stop USA Today and others from gleefully recycling this canard without contacting us. And while we're at it, I was not aware of, nor was I involved in any war room inside the Willard Hotel. I did have a room there where I slept. I was there the entire day of January 6th. I did come out in front of the hotel in the morning to kind of stretch my legs, but I didn't go to the Ellipse. I certainly did not march to the Capitol. It is nonetheless, the Washington Post, to their credit, reported, and I quote, "The Willard attracted many pro-Trump figures around that time, including Stop the Steal provocateur Roger Stone. Stone was not part of the Giuliani team at the Willard Hotel and did not participate in any of the team's efforts, according to 3 people with knowledge of the matter." So, sorry, folks, I was never in any war room. This is the way the fake news rolls. Those who know the true history of Stop the Steal know that it first surfaced actually in 1952 at the Republican National Convention. It was the battle cry of the supporters of General Dwight Eisenhower, who was challenging Senator Robert Taft of Ohio for the nomination. You see, the Republican National Convention, in their nomination of a presidential candidate, is not bound by state or federal rules. In fact, on the first day that the convention opens, the party adopts the rules under which they will conduct their convention. And General Eisenhower's forces, led by Herbert Brownell, who was a chief of staff to New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey, one-time member of the New York Young Republican Club, later Attorney General in the Eisenhower administration, came up with the brilliant stratagem of challenging the election of Taft delegates in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, ultimately getting a majority to unseat those delegates and reseat them with Eisenhower delegates. And of course, as you know, Dwight Eisenhower went on to be nominated and then went on to become one of our greatest presidents. It's kind of interesting that Herbert Brownell, the man who came up with that strategy, said he went to the old Strand bookstore down in the Village here in Manhattan, and he found the minutes for the convention that nominated William McKinley, and he read them and got the idea from those minutes. Folks don't remember that Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Ohio Governor John Kasich had entered into an unholy alliance in which they planned to unseat Trump delegates, change not only the credentials committee certification of those delegates, but change the rules. In other words, to hijack the nomination, just as the nomination was hijacked from Senator Robert Taft. And thus, I came up with Stop the Steal. In other words, I borrowed it from history. In the end, Paul Manafort, who very ably ran Trump's convention operation, was able to put down this insurrection in both the Rules and the Credentials Committee. Donald Trump was ultimately nominated and went on to be our 45th president. Now, yes, it is true that later in that cycle, when I began to be concerned with issues pertaining to election integrity, I decided that it would be useful to conduct what is known as exit polling. That is where you ask voters when they are leaving the polls after they have voted how they voted. Now, not everybody participates, but a large enough sample participates that you can then compare your totals with the totals in the machines at the polling place in which you're taking these exit polls. And if there's a wide disparity, well, that would at least be some indication of irregularities or anomalies or perhaps even outright fraud. When I announced that I was going to do this, I was sued by the Democrat National Committee. I was sued by 5 Democrat state committees. They sued both Donald J. Trump and myself. And it made a big splash in the media. But when we won in every court, and then the Democrats sought to appeal this question to the U.S. Supreme Court, who declined to hear it, well, that got no coverage whatsoever. By the way, this is pretty simple, folks. They said we were trying to intimidate voters. How can you intimidate a voter when you only speak to them after they have already voted? Anyway, the bad publicity from this really put a crimp in our resources, but we did indeed conduct exit polls in a few crucial precincts, and we generally found that the results tracked the results of that election, well, because Donald Trump was winning. One of the greatest upsets in American political history. In the meantime, for some reason, Kamala Harris seems to think that the endorsement of the Cheneys is somehow a massive plus. Liz Cheney lost her primary in Wisconsin by, I think, almost 40 points. See, they're seeing things in terms of Republicans and Democrats as opposed to seeing things in terms of insiders and outsiders. And there, I think, they make an extraordinary mistake. Not a good week for Kamala Harris. She cannot run on her record because her record is Joe Biden's record. And Joe Biden, in a certain sense, gave her the death hug when he said that she was in the room and she was involved in every major decision in his presidency. And then when she was asked point blank, I think it was on The Voice, she herself could not name anything she would have done differently than Joe Biden. And the problem with that is pretty simple. You cannot run as a change agent if you, by your own admission, would change nothing about our current policies. So Kamala Harris's campaign is reduced to calling Donald Trump Hitler, sure sign that you're losing, and saying over and over again that he speaks about the enemy within. The enemy within. Folks, just this week, a State Department official in this administration leaked Israel's plan to defend themselves to the Iranians. Yes, my friends, we do have indeed an enemy within. I'm Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC Radio. Don't go away. We're at 770 on the AM dial, but if you're out of town, go to WABCradio.com, where we are live streaming right now on 163 stations. In fact, I recommend that you go to the App Store and download the 77 WABC Radio app so you never miss any of the great programming here at the crown jewel of AM radio, 77 WABC.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
You know, it's interesting. In this campaign, Kamala Harris has talked about her record as a prosecutor, first as the San Francisco district attorney, and then, of course, as the Attorney General of California. And she would have you believe she was tough on crime, tough on the cartels. Actually, her policy as district attorney in San Francisco is that a drug dealer had to get arrested 3 times before she would prosecute them. But what's really brought attention is the case of Sheree Peoples. Sheree Peoples is a black mother of a single daughter. She was arrested, perp walked out of her apartment in the morning, 6 a.m., and prosecuted because her daughter, Shayla, was absent from public school. She was truant. The problem with this is that Shayla had a very severe case, and still has, sickle cell anemia. Shayla's back in the hospital this week, but Robert Kennedy interviewed Sheree Peoples. It really is a classic in exposing what Kamala Harris is really all about.
African-American woman who has a daughter, Shayna, a straight-A student. She missed 60 days of school because she was in a hospital because she had sickle cell anemia. And her mom, Sherry, filled out all the forms, the federal and the state forms, explaining why she was missing her school. She did her schoolwork every day. She got straight A's, as I said. But Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of California. And Kamala Harris learned that the state was losing $1.3 billion a year because of truancy. And she said, I want that money. So I'm going to start putting parents in jail whose children skip too much school. Oh, she arrested Sherry Peoples in her home. The police came in and handcuffed her. And when she said, why am I being handcuffed? The police said to her, talk to Kamala Harris. They didn't want to be doing it either. She lost her job. She lost her home. And she still raised an extraordinary child. Don't you want a president of the United States who's going to end chronic disease rather than putting parents in jail? Oh, you want an America president who's going to make our country healthy again?
An amazing moment from President Donald Trump's rally in Georgia. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now having joined Common Cause with Donald Trump, bringing many, many common sense Democrats, independents into the fold, and a very important appeal. The question of chronic childhood disease, the food we're eating, the water we're drinking, the air we're breathing. Donald Trump, with the assistance of Robert Kennedy, could go down in history as the president who made America healthy again. It's very exciting to be part of this. It's very exciting to see this grand coalition of Republicans and Democrats and independents and libertarians working together, not just to make America great again, but to make America healthy again. I'm Roger Stone, and I want to thank you for joining us on The Roger Stone Show.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is The Roger Stone Show, and now we're talking to Cliff Maloney, a.k.a. Mahoney. This guy's such a good guy. The first time I ever had him on my show, I mispronounced his name like 5 times, never corrected me. And since then, we've become very good friends, and he's a man who gets things done. He is the door-knocking guru. He's a political commentator and analyst in his own right, an activist, and he is pursuing what we call the Pennsylvania chase. Very early, Cliff recognized that Pennsylvania was going to be critical in assembling the 270 electoral votes that Donald Trump needs to return to the White House, and he set out to change the topography in Pennsylvania, set certain goals that many people said were impossible, but he's achieved them, and I believe that under his leadership and with some other great patriots like Scott Pressler and Charlie Kirk and others, we're on the cusp of an incredible victory in the Keystone State, speaking as a partisan. Cliff Maloney joins us now. Cliff, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, always great to be with a patriot like yourself. Got a lot going on here on the ground in Pennsylvania. It's pretty wild.
I called you the other night. You were at a Steelers game. You were outside the game signing people up in the closing hours before registration closed. Shows the kind of dedication you have. Now, you said to me months ago that if we got 1/3 of the mail-in ballots coming from registered Republicans, that would be an extraordinary accomplishment. It's never happened before. The Democrats have always swamped us by enormous margins. You said, based on your calculation, we needed 1/3, and you did it. You did it, didn't you?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome when we look at the results that are coming in as we analyze the return. So, yeah, when we set out to do this, the problem was very simple. Democrats were beating us 80-20 when it comes to looking at who received the mail-in votes. And so this entire PHA's program that we launched is pretty simple. How do we get 20%, which is what Trump and other Republicans have averaged? How do we get that to 33%? Right. And as of today, Roger, based on returns, I'm happy to tell you Republicans currently have 33.8% of all the mail-in votes. I mean, Harris and the entire DNC, they're panicking. Right. And so we're knocking 500,000 doors across Pennsylvania. I've got 124 full-time ballot chasers, 10 Airbnbs, and the status of where we are towards knocking those 500,000 doors, as of 10 minutes ago, we've knocked 323,000. So we are on track. We are grinding over these next 10 to 11 days. We won't sleep until November 6th. And my big ask to anybody out there listening to the Roger Stone Show is simple. Come to Pennsylvania. We decide the White House. And so I mean that. You know, if folks want to get involved, you can go to phchase.com. We'll have you set up in minutes. We can put you in a hotel. We can give you some gas cards and meals. And look, if you can't come out, Roger, my ask to everybody on your show is simple. Go to phchase.com, sponsor a ballot chaser. $175 covers an entire day of chasing, and 100% of that money goes directly to the chasers' pay, their housing, and their gas. We need all hands on deck to win Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's what's so incredible about this grassroots organization, folks. There's no overhead. There are no highly compensated political consultants. This is truly grassroots. There is no George Soros writing giant checks to Cliff to take care of everything. We have to do it the old-fashioned way. So if you want to see the president return and you agree with the analysis that Cliff and I share that the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, is crucial, yeah, you can go there. Cliff will put you to work immediately. He'll put you up. He'll get you some half-decent food, and you can join a great crew of patriots. But if you don't have the time, you can't get off work, or you're just not physically up to it, or you live on the other side of the country, doesn't matter. He needs your help. We need your help, and you can go online. Cliff, give them the address again.
Sure, it's phachase.com, PACHASE.com. Both you can go there to apply to come out and volunteer, or to sponsor a ballot chaser. We really appreciate it, Roger.
And it's not too late, folks. That's the other thing. Anyone says, well, come on, the election's only days away. No, it's actually not too late right up till the last minute, because Cliff has shifted his operation from registrations to chasing down the mail-in ballots to make sure the Republicans mail theirs in, and then he'll move into making sure people vote on Election Day. So right up until the polls close, Cliff and the boys will be out there grinding every single day. I hit him up on the text and I say, how we doing today, Cliff? And he says, we're grinding, man. We're just grinding. This is grassroots politics at its very best. And Cliff Maloney is he's no amateur. He's worked for Senator Rand Paul. He's worked for Congressman Thomas Massey, two great libertarians. Helped that great patriot, Georgia Senator Colton Moore. I love that guy. He is a very solid guy. And Pennsylvania is, it has become a swing state. It's kind of interesting. In the western part of the state, which, was once thought to be solid Democrat country, Donald Trump has made deep inroads among working class Democrats, particularly in the counties around Pittsburgh. And it's interesting. I ran Arlen Specter's campaigns there back in the day. The people in Philadelphia, they really dislike folks in the West, and the folks in the West, they're ambivalent about Philadelphia. They really don't care. It's almost like two states. Actually, it's like three states because the middle of the state, it's more like Alabama, and it's rural. Pennsylvania has among the largest percentage per capita of gun owners. It's not a solely urban state, and Cliff, you've made great inroads among evangelical Christians, among hunters and gun owners, bringing in people who agree with us but haven't been voting for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think that, the nice thing is if you look at registration, right, there's different numbers to look at. Yes, there's polling. But if you look at registration, I mean, in 2020, Trump was down nearly 700,000 when you compare registered Republicans to Democrats. That's below 300,000 now, Roger. I mean, we've cut that in half. I give Scott Presler, Charlie Kirk, so many of these groups credit because they understood that. And I also have to give Donald Trump credit, right? These folks in Pennsylvania got to experience 4 years of a Biden-Harris administration. Right? And so now what's happening is they're comparing that to the 4 years under Trump, and you see people fleeing the Democrat Party, and you've got evangelicals, you've got gun owners, you've got truck drivers, you've got the Amish. These folks are all registering Republican, right? They're realizing they have to get involved. And Roger, the biggest problem that I try to solve is that in 2020, Trump lost PA by 80,000 votes, but there were 141,000 Republicans who actually requested a mail-in ballot, and they never voted. They didn't send it back. They didn't go to the polls. But I don't blame them because in 2020, we weren't doing these types of grassroots programs, right? And so that's what the conversations at the door are right now. And look, you know the drill. If we're in a primary and it's a heated primary of a Patriot versus a Rhino, those are tough doors because you're talking to Republicans and you're trying to convince them that this Republican is better than the other. Or in a typical general election when you're knocking doors, you're trying to talk to swing voters. Roger, this whole ballot chase effort, it's some of the easiest and best and most optimistic doors we've ever knocked because every door you knock on, it's a Republican, they're pro-Trump, they're going to vote Republican up and down the ballot. We're just reminding them, hey, Bill, you've got that ballot sitting there. Can I get you to send it in today? And so Democrats call this a reminder campaign. That's what it is. But you're blowing these people up, chasing every single ballot. And if you look at these returns, like I said earlier, the fact that we're at 33%, let me explain what that means compared to 2020. Okay, not just in percentage, but in raw returns, raw actual votes. Republicans have returned 129,000 more ballots than we had in at this time in 2020. Democrats are down nearly 200,000. And remember, we only lost the state by 80,000. So the whole narrative from the Democrats now is, oh, well, the numbers aren't that bad because our people are going to show up on election day. Well, good luck. We know people are much more likely to vote if they have a ballot sitting on their table. And now Democrats have to get nearly 600,000 of their voters that voted by mail last time to vote only on one day, November 5th. So I feel very optimistic about where we are right now.
A tough question for you, Cliff. In 2020, I think you and I both believe there were some irregularities, some anomalies in the Philadelphia county voting. a disagreement when the voting stopped, but the vote counting stopped, but it seemed to continue for Democrats. A number of patriots challenged the mail-in voting law in Pennsylvania. I'm not a lawyer, but my reading of the state constitution, it looks unconstitutional to me. The state constitution is very specific. That was was upheld by the middle courts. It was decided in the Common Pleas Court and then upheld in the middle courts and then ultimately struck down by what I believe is a politicized state Supreme Court. Are you concerned about Election Day shenanigans?
Yeah, I think the first thing I did before I agreed to do this, when I was asked to run this program, was to really look into, okay, well, what exactly happened in 2020? What are we putting in place to fix some of these problems and to make sure we have safeguards? So the first thing I'll say is this. Okay, the RNC under Michael Whatley and Laura Trump, night and day compared to what we had in 2020. They're working with the grassroots. We're sharing data where we can legally, and they are laser focused on making sure that only legal votes can count. I'm talking droves of attorneys, people that, I've known all these folks across PA, and they've tapped into some of the best. The team of legal minds really gives me some confidence. So that's number one. Number two, you're exactly right. In 2020, there were a lot of ballots. And here's what I actually found when I looked at it. What happened was there were all these new rules during COVID that allowed for this. And what I found was a lot of the county boards, their election boards, they would look at the rules and then they got to interpret it however they want. Now, remember, there's 67 counties in Pennsylvania, but in Philadelphia County and Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is, a lot of these mail-in ballots weren't signed. They weren't dated. Or they didn't have a secrecy envelope. And a lot of the boards just said, well, you know what? We don't want to disenfranchise voters. Well, in those areas, when it's 90-10, or 9 out of every 10 mail-in ballots is going to support Biden, that's where you see this huge shift in numbers. And the Republicans were just not prepared for that. But the good news is it is now law of the land in Pennsylvania that every single mail-in ballot has to be signed, it has to be dated, and they have to have the secrecy sleeve. Now, you and I know very well, Roger, that the Democrats will fight it post-election. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have this huge pile of provisional ballots, meaning the mail-in ballots that didn't pass the smell test. Democrats are going to go to war, and they are going to go to war to get every one of those votes to count. We have to make this thing too big to rig. And what I mean by that is we have to win Pennsylvania by more votes than there are provisional ballots left. And if we win by at least 2, maybe 3%, it's over because they're not going to have enough of those provisional ballots to argue in court. But I'm telling you right now, and I don't mean to be pessimistic, if this thing comes down to 50 or 100,000 votes, and they've got 200 or maybe 150,000 that are provisionals, we are going to decide Pennsylvania not through the ballot box, but through the courtroom. And so my urge to everyone, get out there in Pennsylvania, vote now. If you can't vote early for some reason, then get yourself to the polls on November 5th. But we have the numbers. We just have to get them to show up and vote for Trump.
I've been watching the collar counties outside of Philadelphia, which used to be, reliably Republican counties, Bucks and Montgomery and so on. Then they kind of trended left. But now the economic issues seem to really be hurting the Democrats in those counties. Looking at the early voting numbers in those counties, I think that's going to be a very significant development. I recently looked at some polling in those areas as well. So I think, Cliff, you've got a very, very good game plan. And again, money is the mother's milk of politics. Cliff can't do anything without the support he needs. You can go to pachase.com and you can essentially sponsor a ballot chaser, or you can get in your station wagon and head to the Keystone State, and Cliff will put you to work. I guarantee you that. But this is going to go down in history as one of the great grassroots efforts of all time. This is old-fashioned shoe leather politics. This isn't the highly mechanized the process. I mean, we don't have live callers anymore. We have these really annoying robocalls that I think everybody hangs up on when they get them. And Cliff's and his folks are doing it the hard way, door to door, person to person. It's hard work, and particularly in this atmosphere where, as you can imagine, some people in some neighborhoods are reticent about opening their door to a stranger due to the surge in crime based on the open borders policies of Harris and Biden. That has to make your job a little tougher, no, Cliff?
Oh, it's really, really interesting you say that because, yeah, in certain neighborhoods, there's definitely people that pause for a second. One thing I have to say on your show here, Roger, while you have me, I'm telling you right now that people should keep their eyes on the black male vote. We are seeing something in the Philly suburbs and Pittsburgh suburbs that this is not 2016, this is not 2020. Something has changed. Whether it's economic policy and they're just realizing, Harris versus Trump and what it would mean for the next 4 years. But I'm just telling you that the amount of support, and we're seeing it, right? This isn't a poll. This isn't me telling you I've got a hunch, right? I'm out here chasing ballots with my teammates. I'm getting the feedback. We have a daily tracker where we see where we are with our stats and we get feedback. Black men love Donald Trump and they hate Kamala Harris. And I'm telling you, I think the shift in that number is going to be one of the reasons Trump not only wins PA, but wins the White House. And I think Democrats are going to have an identity crisis after this election. They're crumbling with black men. They're crumbling with Hispanics. They're crumbling with white men. They're crumbling with blue-collar workers of any ethnicity. The only voting bloc the Democrats have now is illegal immigrants. Right? And I don't know how you build a national coalition on that. And so that's why I'm excited about Trump winning, securing the border, us continuing to build our coalitions. But the Democrats, they're going to have to look in the mirror and figure out where they go from here because their message is not resonating with anyone.
Well, they essentially have no message. I mean, there's no positive proposal or plan for the future. I mean, first of all, Joe Biden smothers Kamala Harris in his death grip by saying, no, she was in on every decision. She was right there in the room, and she's been a part of everything we've done. He knows what he's doing because he's still quite bitter about being forced out of the race by Barack Obama. And then she herself on The View, when she's asked, well, what would you do differently? I mean, how would you be different than Joe Biden? She says, well, I can't really think of any area where we'd be different. You can't run as a change agent and also run on the record of the current administration. It doesn't work. Hubert Humphrey tried it. Didn't work for him. It will not work. Cliff, I think you're absolutely onto something there. These numbers among Hispanic voters, for example, our high watermark among Republicans previously was 38%. Donald Trump's going to break 50. I think he's going to be in the mid-50s, 52, 54, 56 among Hispanic voters. This is a sea change. This is historic. What Cliff Maloney and his many, many workers on the ground are doing in Pennsylvania, this is also historic, folks. So for the last time, you can help him. You can get in the fight. Don't stand on the sidelines pointing out how the folks who are in the arena could do things better. Get in the arena yourself. And if you can't get in the arena yourself, then send a contribution to the PAChase.com. PAChase.com. You know your money will be well spent. Again, there's no overhead here. There's no fancy offices. There are no big consulting fees. This is grassroots politics at its best. By the way, if anyone from the Harris campaign wants to come on the Roger Stone Show and talk about their grassroots efforts, they're welcome. I may have a few questions for them, but they're welcome to come here because, we cover politics from all sides. But Cliff Maloney, thank you for joining us today in The Roger Stone Show.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
As I analyze the closing weeks of this presidential campaign, reminds me very, very much of the closing days of the 1980 campaign, where Ronald Reagan was challenging Jimmy Carter. People keep saying, is this going to be a Reagan-like landslide? Folks, go back and look at that race. It was much, much closer than you remember it. Reagan won comfortably, but calling it a landslide, like the landslide of Lyndon Johnson in 1964 or the landslide of Richard Nixon in 1972, it's nothing at all like that. It was a competitive race right up till the end. Reagan, like Trump, was a polarizing figure. Those who loved him really loved him. Those who didn't like him really, really didn't like him. Donald Trump had a net unfavorable rating among voters when he beat Hillary Clinton. More voters had an unfavorable view of him than a favorable view. However, those who were for Trump were very deeply for him. They were intense. They were certain to vote. They were absolutely positive. Some 91% of them said there was no chance they would change their mind. They were with him, whereas her support tended to be softer. And then you also had just a belief that those who knew more about presidential politics, Bill and Hillary Clinton, they'd worked for George McGovern. I mean, Bill Clinton ran George McGovern's campaign for president in Texas in 1972. Between the two of them, they had vastly more presidential campaign experience. Bill's 2 campaigns, Hillary's failed campaign against Barack Obama, which leave very, very deep scars. I mean, very famously, Bill Clinton couldn't really believe that this unknown state senator and U.S. senator from Illinois, Barack Obama, was going to beat his wife, who had been, had been the U.S. senator from New York. And he said, Bill Clinton said to Ted Kennedy, Ted, back in the day, this boy would have been fetching us coffee. And that so offended Ted Kennedy that he immediately endorsed Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton for president. But if you look at these numbers, what you see is that both candidates are polarizing. Trump has his detractors, there's no question about that. But there's real intensity among those who support him. They will definitely turn out. His unfavorables actually been slowly going down. His favorable is slowly moving up. So it's not intractable. And at the same time, the unfavorable rating for Kamala Harris is skyrocketing compared to where she was just a few weeks ago. Her unfavorable rating is dropping. Now, what's even more important is when you look at the questions in which voters are asked who is better to handle individual problems, whether it is inflation or gas prices or solving the war between Russia and Ukraine, or bringing peace to the Middle East, or sealing our border and dealing with the crime and drug epidemic now gripping the country. On all of those questions, that's where Donald Trump solidly outpoints Kamala Harris, usually in the low to mid 50s. And that is the leading indicator of how the very small pool of undecideds who are left in this race will break. So it's why I'm growingly confident. Now, people keep saying, well, is Trump going to be elected? Is he going to win more votes than Kamala Harris? Yes, I think so now in the popular vote. I also think in the Electoral College. Will there be an effort to discredit his election in some way, using lawfare, using congressional tactics, legal tactics, political tactics? I fear there will be. In a week in which the Department of Defense signs or issues new directives that for the first time actually give them the authority to use lethal force on American citizens. This is almost unthinkable. And it happens the same week that Kamala Harris says in an interview with Fox that Trump is going to use the military on those who oppose him. You can't make this stuff up. In the very same week, this idea that Trump speaks about the enemy within. Well, these are the people that called us deplorables. These are people who said that parents who were concerned about the curriculum being taught to their children in the public schools were domestic terrorists. or if you were a Roman Catholic, like my grandmother, who went religiously to the Latin Mass, that you were some kind of domestic terrorist. So this effort to divide us, constantly calling Donald Trump Hitler, which is really offensive. Look, it has created an atmosphere in this country. Congressman Dan Goldman said that Donald Trump had to be eliminated. David Plouffe, who is the chief political honcho for Barack Obama, the guy who's now been assigned to try to save Kamala Harris, maybe an impossible assignment, by the way, he not only said that Donald Trump should be terminated, but yesterday he was out there echoing the Trump as Hitler meme. Chris Matthews said that if Trump is elected, reporters will be put up against the wall and shot. No, they won't, folks. That's ridiculous. But it is that kind of overheated rhetoric that has created the atmosphere that allows us to have at least two assassination attempts on an American former president who's now the nominee of his party. And to me, that is a very, very sad thing indeed. Lastly, I'm a hard-boiled political operative. I admit it. I've spent 25 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system. I think I've seen it all. And people say to me, Stone, what is your strategy for these closing days? And I'm very blunt about it. Prayer is my strategy, my friends. Pray to God. Pray for the protection of our president. Pray for our country. Pray for all Americans, Republicans and Democrats, and those who choose not to be in any party, that we can be reunited again, that we can be prosperous again, that we can live in freedom again, that we can have a healthy society again. All of these things are possible, but they are only possible through prayer. Thank you, and God bless you for joining us here on The Roger Stone Show. Now stand by, because my good friend Joe Piscopo, guy with an incredible set of pipes, he'll be right along with Sundays with Sinatra.